I lost the best person in my life because I was too proud to apologize. I used to believe that being strong meant never backing down, never admitting you were wrong, never letting anyone see you bend. I carried that belief like armor, and for a long time it felt like it protected me. It made arguments easier because I never had to question myself. It made silence feel powerful, like I was the one in control. But I didn't realize that every time I chose pride over humility, I was quietly building a wall between me and the person who mattered most. She wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but she had this way of really trying to understand me, even when I made it difficult. And I made it difficult more often than I'd like to admit. The night everything started unraveling wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no slammed doors. It was something small, almost forgettable. We had plans, and I canceled at the last minute because something more important came up. That's what I told her. The truth was, I just didn't feel like going. I wanted to stay home, scroll on my phone, sit in the quiet, and not have to show up emotionally for anyone. When she told me she was disappointed, I felt accused. I heard criticism instead of hurt. I snapped back, told her she was overreacting, that she was too sensitive. I watched her face fall, and even then, some part of me knew I was being unfair. But admitting that in the moment would have meant softening, and I didn't know how to do that without feeling small. She didn't yell. She just got quiet. That quiet should have scared me more than it did. Instead of asking what she needed, I doubled down. I listed all the things I had done for her recently, like love was a ledger and I had earned the right to disappoint her. I told myself I was tired of always being the one expected to adjust. I framed it as self-respect. I convinced myself that apologizing would set a precedent, that she would expect it every time. It sounds ridiculous now, but at the time it felt logical, even necessary. I thought I was protecting my dignity. What I was really protecting was my ego. Over the next few days, she tried to talk about it. Not just the canceled plans, but the pattern. She said she felt like her feelings were an inconvenience to me. She said she was starting to feel alone even when we were together. I remember sitting across from her, arms crossed, listening but not really hearing. Every sentence she spoke, I translated into an attack. I was so focused on defending myself that I didn't pause to consider that she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to reach me, and I stayed just out of reach on purpose. There was a moment I think about it often when she asked me directly, "Do you even care that you hurt me?" It was such a simple question. Honest. Vulnerable. And instead of answering it with reassurance or remorse, I shrugged and said, "I think you're making this bigger than it is." I can still see the way her eyes changed. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. Like something in her head shifted quietly into place. I felt a flicker of guilt then, but I swallowed it. I told myself if I gave in, if I apologized, it would mean I had been the bad guy all along. And I wasn't ready to see myself that way. Days turned into a strange kind of distance. We were still technically together, still texting, still sharing space, but something essential had thinned out. She stopped bringing things up. She stopped asking for reassurance. She stopped telling me when she was upset. At first, I felt relieved. The tension seemed lower. There were fewer, serious talks. I told myself this was better, that she had finally learned not to overanalyze everything. I mistook her withdrawal for peace. The last conversation we had wasn't explosive either. It was calm in a way that made it harder to argue with. She told me she didn't think I was a bad person. That almost hurt more. She said she just didn't feel safe being vulnerable with me anymore. She said every time she tried to tell me she was hurt, I made her feel foolish for feeling it. She admitted she had started censoring herself around me, and that wasn't who she wanted to become. I wanted to interrupt her to argue, to point out times I had been supportive. But something about her tone made it clear she wasn't debating. She was concluding. When she said she thought it would be better to end things, my first instinct was still pride. I told her that if that's what she wanted, I wouldn't stop her. I said it in this steady, controlled voice, like I was granting her permission. Inside, though, something was cracking. I expected her to hesitate, to backtrack, to fight for us the way she used to. But she didn't. She just nodded, like she had already grieved this version of us weeks ago. After she left, I waited for her to reach out. I convinced myself she would calm down and realize it wasn't worth losing what we had over few arguments. I rehearsed what I would say if she texted me. I even practiced a half apology in my head, careful not to take full responsibility, just enough to smooth things over. But the message never came. Days turned into weeks. The silence stretched out, and for the first time, I didn't feel powerful in it. I felt abandoned by my own stubbornness. It was in that silence that I started replaying everything without the defensive filter. I heard her voice differently in my memories. I noticed the pauses where she was hoping I'd meet her halfway. I saw the moments where an apology could have softened everything. And I realized how often I had chosen being right over being kind. I had treated apologies like losses, like surrender. I never considered that they could be bridges. The hardest part to admit is that I knew, even back then, that a simple, "I'm sorry," would have changed the trajectory. Not because it would have erased every issue, but because it would have shown her I valued her feelings more than my pride. I was so afraid of being seen as weak that I became emotionally unavailable instead. I thought strength meant standing firm. She needed strength that looked like accountability. I ran into her months later by accident. She looked lighter somehow. Not dramatically happier, just steadier. We exchanged polite words. There was no bitterness in her voice, which somehow made it worse. She wasn't carrying resentment. I was. Toward myself. I wanted to tell her then that I understood now. That I saw what I had done. That I was sorry for making her feel small for having normal human emotions. But the words felt late, like they belonged to a different timeline. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why I resisted apologizing so fiercely. I think part of it was how I was raised. In my family, admitting fault was rare. Arguments were about endurance, about who could hold their ground the longest. I internalized that. I thought compromise meant defeat. I didn't realize I was reenacting old patterns in a new relationship with someone who didn't deserve them. That's the uncomfortable truth. I made her pay for wounds she didn't create. There's also something unsettling about recognizing that I liked the control. Silence gave me leverage. If I didn't respond emotionally, if I kept my tone cool and detached, I felt superior. I never said that out loud, of course. I would have denied it if anyone accused me of it. But when I'm honest with myself, there was a part of me that equated vulnerability with losing status. So I avoided it, even when it meant losing her. Now, when conflicts happen in other areas of my life, I notice the same impulse rise up, the urge to defend first, to protect my image. And sometimes I still give in to it. Change isn't instant just because you faced a consequence. But I carry her memory like a quiet reminder of what pride can cost. Not in a dramatic, tragic way, just in the slow erosion of something good. I don't know if she thinks about me anymore. I don't know if she tells people I was emotionally closed off, or if she's moved on without needing to label it. What I do know is that I had the chance to choose humility, and I chose ego instead. I told myself I was standing up for myself when really I was avoiding the discomfort of admitting I had hurt someone I loved. Sometimes I imagine an alternate version of that night, where I pause after she says she's disappointed, and instead of defending myself, I say, "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have shown up." It's such a small sentence, so ordinary, and yet it feels like it belonged to a braver version of me. I don't know if that apology would have saved everything in the long run. Relationships are more complicated than one moment. But I do know it would have shown her that I was willing to bend. Losing her didn't come with fireworks or dramatic closure. It came with quiet mornings and the slow realization that no one was there to share the small details of my day. It came with understanding that I had pushed away someone who was asking for something simple, acknowledgement. I used to think regret would feel sharp and obvious. Instead, it feels dull and constant, like a background noise that never fully fades. I still struggle with the idea of reaching out to apologize now. Part of me wants to, not to rekindle anything, but to take responsibility properly. Another part of me wonders if that would just be about easing my own guilt. I'm not sure which motivation would be more honest, so I sit with it, with the memory of her asking if I even cared that I hurt her, and my careless answer that proved I wasn't ready to be the person she needed. I lost the best person in my life, not because of betrayal or some dramatic mistake, but because I couldn't bring myself to say 2 words at the right time. And what unsettles me most is knowing that if I were placed back in that moment without the hindsight I have now, I might hesitate all over again, still wrestling with the same pride that cost me everything.